Merry meet everyone, it's just me again, for the 12 people who watch my videos. Look, I am going to do a part 2 of circle casting. I will get to that. There is something I did want to talk about today, and it's been on my mind for a very, very, very long time. And I have spoken before about it. I spoke about it when I was on TikTok, and I spoke about it on Cricket Songs podcast about Witch Talk. I feel like I need to dedicate a whole video to this subject, and I don't feel like anyone's talking about it, which sucks because we don't back each other up enough. We want to make accusations and stuff about people who forged Wicca, but we don't want to back them up or give them credit for anything. So, as if you didn't read the title, old books of witchcraft, not useful information anymore. It's like stupid bullshit. You'll hear people say this, especially on things like TikTok, or Witch Talk, which people don't even use that hashtag anymore. But usually when people talk about book recommendations, they ask for book recommendations, and the first thing people reach for are books about witchcraft or the occult written. Let me give you an example, right? Sorry, I know that took quite some time, but when people make book recommendations, they usually talk about books that are like dime store finds, such as, I'm sure everyone's got a copy of this that a friend gave them. And the Book of Spells by some unknown person who I've never heard before, the publishing house I've never heard before, or things like another thing I was gifted, The Crystal Witch by Robbins and Greenway, no idea who they are. Usually when people make these book recommendations, they make these type of books. These books by throwaway artists or throwaway authors that have written one book and then never written again. They never talk about actual Wiccan or witchcraft authors who either one, influenced an entire movement, or number two, was initiated and can trace their lineage back to Gerald Gardner. And when they do talk about these people, they talk about how mean and racist and homophobic they were when they were alive, judging people who were alive in 1960 by the standards of 2024. Right. So the books that I usually recommend, I hope any sane witch or Wiccan would recommend. And usually, I always recommend, this is a three book in one. This is the first book I ever read on Wicca. It's called Wicca, A Guide for the Solitary Practitioner, Living Wicca, A Further Guide for the Solitary Practitioner, and the complete book of incense, oils, and brews. That is the first book I ever read on Wicca. It was gifted to me by my teacher in the United States, who, yes, you can trace his lineage back to Gerald Gardner. So yes, I was a seeker who had his lineage traced back to Gerald Gardner. Not only did he gift me that, but 2 years later, he gifted me another book. Bucklands' Complete Book of Witchcraft. Now, you've probably seen that I've got markers all in these books, and the same with down here. There's markers there, there's bookmarks, and receipts and, oh, look, a piece of toilet paper. These 3 books that were gifted to me are 2 of the most valuable piece of literature on witchcraft, on modern day witchcraft, that anyone can own. And yet, people like witch talk people and other people who call themselves witch aunts, I'm sorry to drop your name again, let me pick it up off the floor, and people who I totally respect in this community who've written books on traditional Wicca, say that the information in these books are outdated. I don't understand that. What about these books is outdated? What about these books, the information within these books, are outdated contextually in how Wicca is practiced and done on a daily basis? Please inform me, because no one says anything when I ask that. What they're talking about is, well, this book was written in 1988 and this book was written in 1973. Therefore, they're 2 old books that don't need to be read by people in 2024. Well, you know what I say to that? Bullshit. Because when people make recommendations about what Stephen King book should I read, I always start with Carrie. Oh, and then what? Then Salem's Lot. And then what? And then Cujo. Why would I not recommend the first 3 books in Stephen King's bibliography when he is the master of horror? Just because those books are old doesn't mean they're not worth reading. You sound ridiculous. These books are more valuable and worth their weight in gold than anyone on this fucking website can deem an alternative. Like, I don't understand people who will disparage Buckland and Cunningham to shill their own shit. Don't read their books, it's outdated. Read mine about traditional Wicca. I don't like that. I really don't like that. I think that's bullshit. Anyone who says that these books are outdated because, I don't know, maybe someone said something homophobic. I want you to realize that Scott Cunningham was a out and proud bisexual man who died of HIV. So you saying, well, it's homophobic and it's got rhetoric in it, bullshit. Because if you read his biography written by his sister, he was taught by a feminist in high school who also traced their lineage back to Gerald Gardner. Buckland. This man, before I got where I am now, I walked Scott Cunningham's path. His Wicca for the solitary practitioner, which is known as the standing Book of Shadows. That's what his tradition is called. It's a solitary tradition. It's self-initiated. Before I got where I am today, that was what I was. That's what I went by. I always told everyone, I'm a Wiccan, and I am an eclectic solitary practitioner. That's what I was for about 5 years, and then I wasn't religious at all. I was just practicing witchcraft, heavily Wicca based. And, when I read this book, I realized that Anglo-Saxon witchcraft was for me. Buckland's tradition of Seax Wicca gave me meaning. It gave me purpose. It helped me understand history of witchcraft. It helped me understand British traditional witchcraft, because it is a British traditional witchcraft tradition. Not only that, but it is a sister tradition to Gardnerian. These books are invaluable. And I don't understand people that won't read books on Wicca when they want to get into witchcraft. I always recommend when people ask, what do you recommend for someone who wants to get into witchcraft? And I say, well, I recommend Wicca by Scott Cunningham, The Guide for the Solitary Practitioner. And they go, yeah, no, Wicca's a religion and I just want to get into the practice. So what you're telling me is that you want to do all the fun shit without being taught the steps and foundations and the history of where we've gone and how we came to where we are now. I always recommend Wicca. Wicca is not for everyone, and I understand that. British traditional witchcraft is not for everyone, and I get that. It wasn't for me to begin with. Now it is. For the longest time, I was part of the Minoan Brotherhood in an online coven. So I get it. When days went by, you want to know the reason I left that is because I didn't believe in the politics that they were talking. It was too American politics driven, and I just got sick of seeing it. Wicca is a structured based religion that uses witchcraft as part of its ritualistic design. Wicca has structure, and people who get into witchcraft without structure tend to be the ones who take things from everywhere, including things that aren't witchcraft, and call it witchcraft. They blur the lines between what is paganism and what is a spiritual practice and confuse it for witchcraft. Reading tarot cards isn't witchy. Believing in Buddha and giving someone a Buddha statue for Christmas isn't witchy. Putting crystals in your drinking water isn't witchy. What you're doing is you're taking elements of Reiki, Shinto, Buddhism. What you're doing is you're taking these and putting them into something that isn't witchcraft and calling it witchcraft. So then when you pass on your knowledge to seekers, you've given them something that you've bundled as witchcraft, and it's not witchcraft. This is witchcraft. If you want to learn witchcraft, I suggest you start with Wicca, because Wicca is witchcraft. I hate people who say, well, Wicca is a religion and witchcraft is a practice. I understand that that is the modern day way that people see it, but to Wiccans, Wicca and witchcraft are just interchangeable words. And witchcraft is Wicca, and Wicca is witchcraft. The old adage goes, not all witches are Wiccan, but all Wiccans are witches. And now you got people who want to argue and say, well, no, I'm a Wiccan and I'm not a witch. Girl, Wicca is a derivative of the Anglo-Saxon word witcher, which is witch. I don't understand people who want to retard the language and claim that they're not something that they clearly are practicing. The information in these books are worth their weight in gold. I don't understand people who aren't willing to read these books to get the information that they are searching for. And then they say things like, well, Wicca is cultural appropriation. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? Where specifically in any of these books can you tell me you find cultural appropriation? Because all I see is an excuse of why you don't want structure in your practice, why you don't want routine over ritual, why you don't want to have a belief system part of your cool witchy aesthetic. You're not giving me answers. You want to know where I see cultural appropriation, if you can, whatever the fuck that is when you take things like Shintoism, Reiki, tarot, crystals, and you delve that into your witchy aesthetic and call it witchcraft. Baby girl, that's not witchcraft. This is witchcraft. This is witchcraft. I said it in the video about things. I said it in the video about crystals. I'm not a crystal person. I have crystals. I gift them to people. If I find that I need something to focus on, I'll use a crystal. But crystals to me are not remotely witchy, and they're not. They are a therapeutic thing used by those who practice Reiki. I don't understand people who refuse to read books on witchcraft, like Wicca and the complete book of Witchcraft, but will read things like whatever it is they're reading now. And they refuse to read something because of a political stance. Well, it's transphobic. I don't want to read that. Fuck me. Nothing in this is phobic. It's letting you know history. The names of these chapters are self-explanatory. Wicca and shamanism, the deities, magic, tools, music and dance and gestures, the spiral of rebirth, concerning initiation, exercise and magical techniques, self-dedication. I find people who talk about magic, who claim that they practice witchcraft but don't practice witchcraft, will talk about, oh, you need this candle and this oil and you do the spell this way. And they never talk about things like the cone of power. They never talk about things such as building energy and directing energy toward a goal. They never talk about things like that. Something tells me that they don't know that that is part of spellcrafting, is focusing energy and directing energy. It's not just sitting in front of a candle and repeating words over and over and saying, oh, it's just all about the intention. I can have the intention of calling in sick tomorrow and then end up not doing it. You know what I mean? These are the book recommendations I make. Right or wrong, whether you're searching Wicca or looking for witchcraft. This book is not about what you call the practice of witchcraft. This book is a book of Wicca, because before 1990, witchcraft and Wicca were the same thing. So I'll recommend that book to anyone who says, oh, I don't want to learn Wicca, because this book doesn't even mention Wicca, but it is a book about Wicca. I always recommend Wicca for people who are starting in witchcraft. It is a foundation, it is a routine, it gives you structure, and it lowers your expectations on what witchcraft truly is. Because if you read books like this from Barnes and Noble, or if you live in Australia, from Dimmicks, they're going to tell you, this is the thing, it's like I'm on page 32 right now, and it doesn't even say anything about releasing energy, cones of power. It doesn't talk about circle casting or anything. It's just, these are crystals and here are a couple of spells for these crystals. Is that the type of knowledge you're seeking to gain? Or do you want to gain the knowledge of what witchcraft is? Well, I'm sorry, but to get to there, you do need a structure. So I always recommend Wicca for people who want to, I recommend the book, and I recommend the religion of Wicca, because, like I said, it's structured and it lowers your expectations. It's not about black makeup and the aesthetic. It talks about having an actual relationship with deities. This book by Scott Cunningham, I can still smell like the scented oils on this book, because I used to have this in a drawer when I was 15. with all my essential oils. It still smells like it now. This book mentions the gods nearly every page. Having a relationship with those deities and those spiritual entities such as the corners and the watchtowers and the elements, which a lot of people think are the same thing. It's not. Talking to nature spirits, going to a beach and sitting on a sand dune and talking to Poseidon, you know, or just, that is witchcraft. Having a relationship with the gods is witchcraft. People who say, well, I don't believe in gods. Well, then how the fuck are you practicing magic? Because you're asking to believe in something you can't see, but you'll refuse to believe in something you can't see based on the principle of not wanting to practice a religion. It sounds stupid. It sounds redundant to me. I could never, ever, ever, ever give up Witchcraft Today by Gerald Gardner, this book, Complete Book of Witchcraft by Ray Buckland, and The Tree, which is the traditional doctrine of CX Wicca. You can never take that from me. And the 3 Wicca series of Scott Cunningham. They are worth so much more than, I'm sorry, Silver Raven Wolf. You know what I mean? But I can't even think of people who are still writing books on Wicca and witchcraft that are worth talking about. If you read books by throwaway, these like, have you ever heard of a publishing house called Sterling Ethos? No. But you know what I've heard of? Llewellyn. Llewellyn is the place to go. Both these books are published by Llewellyn, by the way. So, book recommendations on witchcraft. If you're going to downplay the history of witchcraft and the structure of what witchcraft is in order to get a creepy aesthetic and witchy vibes and spellcasting is so fun, then you're in it for the wrong reasons. Witchcraft is about having a religion. Witchcraft is about having a relationship with the gods and being and a spiritual practice. Witchcraft is the journey of your life now. So when you go to Summerland, you take this information, what you've learnt from now, into your next spiritual journey. That's what witchcraft is. Witchcraft is not spells and magic. Witchcraft is a relationship with the gods. Blessed be everyone. Merry part. I tried to tone down my angriness in this video, but I just really think that talking about Wicca and books on witchcraft, people just really, they really shit me off. There is a book called Traditional Witchcraft, Stag, Besom, and Sword, I think. I have it. I've read it. Great book. Not Wicca focused at all, but very Wicca coded. That's a book I recommend. And it's new. It's like, what, 2 years ago I think it was written? That's a good book. Wicca for Life by Ray Buckland was written in 2010. Okay, so it was written recently. Scottish Wicca by Ray Buckland, another great one. Really highly recommend those. Anyway, bye everyone. I love you all and have a great week.